with Current Hydro. Anton?
Thanks, Haley. My name is Anton Hasselbrook. I'm a mechanical engineer for Central Nebraska Public Power and Irrigation District.
And is Yassi on? I'm not seeing Yassi. Yassi is also a flow chair with us, and she is with Burns and McDonald. So today, one thing we've been starting to do on these calls is if it's your first time attending a flow meeting, or maybe it's been a little bit since you've attended a flow meeting, we're kind of doing like a first timers round robin. So if it is your first time, feel free to raise your hand and kind of give a quick introduction if you feel comfortable, or you can just type it in the chat. And that's how kind of we get to connect with flow members all across the country. I'm not seeing anyone's hands up, so maybe. Oh, Mitchell, go ahead.
Hi, Mitchell Kriege, lead environmental specialist at Current Hydro with Haley. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Thanks for joining.
Happy to see you, Mitchell.
Alexa?
Hi, my name is Alexa Velastro. I'm with Central Hudson Gas and Electric. I'm an environmental coordinator out of New York.
Great. Thanks for joining. Anybody else? I might be missing some people. I can't see the hands super clear on my screen. Okay. So we do have an exciting thing for our last call of December, and that is raffles. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Rogers with NHA to give a little bit more information on that.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Sorry if there's any feedback. Thank you everyone for joining our last Flow meeting of 2025. If you were a part of Flow and joined the call last year, we did a fun raffle gift card giveaway to celebrate the end of the year. Of course, that does not come for free. I will be asking you guys to fill out a survey that is going to help guide Flow's programming for 2026 and beyond. So Jenna is going to put a link to a Mentimeter poll in the chat. So if you can go in, click on that link, and then fill out that survey within, the next couple minutes, or if you don't have time to do it in the next couple minutes throughout the call, we're going to present the survey results at the end, and we will put those who participated into a raffle to win a gift card. And we are going to have 2 people who receive gift cards today. This is an anonymous survey. You will be asked to present your name at the front of the survey because I need record for who to put into the raffle when I do my little spinny wheel. So that's the only time your name is going to be recorded. Beyond that, please feel free to put any input you have. It is anonymous. The questions you will see are going to be about, your hydropower, your water power industry story. You get here, what keeps you around, what does your work life look like in, succession planning with your senior leadership within your organization. And then of course there's a last question about what type of soft skill training that you are looking for to help advance you in your own career. So those are the types of questions you're going to see. You do have a chance of getting rewarded after you participate in the survey. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and the Flow leadership team really appreciates you taking the time to help guide our work in 2026. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Kelly. If folks have questions on the survey, feel free to just pop them in the chat throughout today's call as well. So I have a couple quick announcements before we get to our speaker today. The first of which is regarding NHA's Hydropower Systems Principles Training. We've been talking a lot about this over the past year. This is a really great opportunity to kind of get an overview of the hydropower industry. So the course covers a variety of topics and disciplines. Over 80 companies have participated so far, and 90% of the people who take the course highly recommend it coming out of it. So it really is like a real world value course to take. This is especially helpful if you're new or maybe mid-career in the hydropower industry. And to help those folks who are earlier in their career get access to this course, NHA has provided a 50% discount. So this is applicable for Flow members and can be really beneficial if you have to justify your attendance to senior management within your companies. So for 2026, that code is going to be FLOW26, all capital letters, and you will use that code at the end of your registration. For 2026, there's a variety of different offerings. So the course can either be a 40-hour course or an 8-hour course. The 40-hour course is totally virtual, and that will be on February 20th and October 15th are the two cohorts for the 40-hour. There's also 8-hour courses, which are also virtual on April 2nd and April 3rd. And I believe Kelly is putting some links in the chat if you are interested in learning more about those programs. Additionally, we have most of the NHA meetings scheduled for 2026. The first one is going to be Waterpower Week. If folks are unfamiliar, this occurs every year. It's one of NHA's 2 national conferences in the spring. It's always in Washington, D.C. For 2026, it's going to be March 19th to the 13th. Flow members are eligible for 50% off. So if you're interested in going to Waterpower Week, you can reach out directly to Kelly and she will provide you that discount code. And as we've done in years before, we will have a Flow networking event that will be hosted offsite, likely close to the Westin downtown DC, which is the location of the conference. The second meeting that we want folks to be aware of is NHA's Midwest meeting. So for this year, it will be co-hosted with MHUG, the Midwest Hydro Users Group. This will be April 28th and 29th in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we are planning a Flow networking event at this meeting. So more information to come as we roll into 2026. And then lastly, Clean Currents. So September feels like a long time away, but never too early to get the conversations going within your companies. Clean Currents will be held September 23rd and 4th in Phoenix, Arizona this year. Again, we will be having a Flow-specific offsite networking event. And NHA has a lot of resources for how to justify your attendance at these conferences. So feel free to check out their website or reach out directly to Kelly or myself if you need help with that. And then lastly, following up on our last call where we heard from the 5 national laboratories, they have actually since reached out and have a couple more opportunities for Flow members to engage in the industry. So the first of which is mentoring for the Hydropower Collegiate Competition. We talked about this a little bit. There are 5 spots still open. This is an awesome opportunity for you to get leadership, mentorship experience. You're going to be working directly with college students as they kind of shape the next generation of water power. So it's pretty low commitment. It's 15 hours from now through May. Oftentimes teams actually take less time than the 15 hours. And registration to be a mentor is open until the end of the year, December 31st. So Kelly will put a link in the chat. Again, highly recommend. It's a great opportunity. And this is the first year that they really opened it up to Flow members. And then lastly, they are also inviting Flow members to take a short survey as it relates to the future of hydropower. So it's part of a research study that the Pacific Northwest National Lab is doing. The survey is an extension of something called the Reimagined Hydropower Vision Roadmap. And even if you're unfamiliar with the roadmap, they're highly encouraging folks to take part of the survey. It is voluntary. Kevin Duffy is kind of the point contact for this, and Kelly will put Kevin's contact information in the chat, and the survey is open until January 12th. So we are highly encouraging folks, if you have 15 minutes to spare, to take that survey. Okay, thanks for bearing with me through those announcements. So we have a really exciting speaker today, Ken Hogan. If folks remember, we did kind of a Fish Passage 101 earlier this year in February, and this is a follow-up to that. So this is what we're calling a 201, really looking at how regulators are viewing and assessing fish passage. Ken has a really interesting career that he'll get into, but he's worked for FERC and U.S. Fish and Wildlife and is now an environmental planner at Stantec. So we'll learn a little bit more about Ken's career path and how regulating agencies are assessing fish passage at hydropower projects. So Ken, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Katie. And let me just say, I'm excited to be here. I think this Flow program and what NHA is doing here is just wonderful. I wish it was available while I was growing up. Speaking of growing up, I started my career in hydropower at a very young age. I toured my first hydropower plant and walked through the drainage gallery as a Cub Scout. My father worked for the local utility in the state of New Hampshire and had tremendous access to hydropower that probably most people don't have at that age. So it's always been a familiarity to me for my entire life, although I never realized that my career would bring me here to where I am. Or at that time, I didn't realize that I'd be here doing this in my career. So I started out, as Katie indicated, with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I spent 20 years in that role as a senior technical expert in aquatics in the Division of Hydropower Licensing. In 2020, I left FERC for a position as the Regional Hydropower Program Coordinator for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Northeast region, where I was able to return home to New Hampshire. So that was kind of what was intended to be my last move in my career to get back home from Washington, D.C., back to New Hampshire. Recently, and as everybody's aware, there have been significant changes in the administration, and I found an exit plan to leave the federal government and come to work for Stantec, which has been a wonderful parachute for me, and I'm continue to do what I've always enjoyed doing and doing it well, I think. And if any of you working for industry clients out there need support, I'm available. So there's my plug for Stantec. But I will say, before I get into too much discussion about fish passage, knowing the background of my career, please be aware that anything that I say today is really my opinion, and it's sourced from me. It's not from any of my former or current employers. So take it from that. So when I was invited to come speak to you today, I was asked to talk about a couple of points. Fish passage and approaches to getting to how to address fish passage requirements, strategies for effectively collaborating with regulators, and I think I'm going to stress on this one the most, and then how to shift mindsets away from my way or the highway and really address shared problem solving techniques. So they're all, you'll probably hear a general theme, and it really is communication. So I'm going to speak mostly from a perspective of a fishery resource agency and my experiences as a regulator. But when we talk fish passage, know that usually FERC takes a back seat, so it's FERC will facilitate conversations, but they're not often requiring fish passage, other than they're really relying on the resource agencies to inform what those fish passage measures are. So when I share my knowledge here today, it's really about industry and resource agencies working together to come up with fish passage solutions. And FERC's kind of in a backseat there. So just be aware from that perspective. If you're, and I'm assuming most of the folks on the phone are industry folks. What I will say is, if you're entering into a relicensing or have a fish passage requirement or anticipate a fish passage requirement, start early. Communicate with your regulators, communicate with National Marine Fisheries Service, communicate with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and talk about the resource issues and understand what their goals and objectives are for the resource. They're going to they have their Section 18 fish passage authority, which is a mandatory condition that they can put into a license. And the licensee has to implement that, and FERC has to require it. So they have what folks refer to as the hammer. They'd rather not use it. They would rather come to some resolution and know this. The resource agencies would rather come to some agreeable resolution that they can codify in a Section 18 fishway prescription rather than dictate that resolution to a licensee. So licensees actually have a lot of ability to craft and design what that requirement is if they open up a dialogue and have genuine conversation with the resource agencies. And to do that, you're looking at on understanding what it is that the resource agencies are trying to protect. You know your project the best, and trying to work with them to figure out how to accomplish that. So they may come in with, we know how to fix it. You can do X, Y, and Z, but that's whatever X, Y, and Z is may not be very palatable to the economics of your project. The agencies generally don't know what the economics of your project are. So educate them. Talk to them about what's important to you as a project owner or developer to protect and preserve, and then work with the agencies to do that. The agency's job is not to kill hydropower projects. It is to permit the projects in a way that are protective of the resource. So it really takes two to do that dance if you want to get to a positive solution. And it's open communication. So I participated in a settlement agreement, which was really quite interesting. For whatever reason, industry often has a difficult time communicating what's important to them. You know, it's proprietary information. They don't want to give away their secrets, their trade secrets, whatever it might be. But when doing that, it ends up hindering the resource agency's ability to work with industry to come up with solutions. So, and what I mean by that is what happens is you'll have a hydropower plant owner saying no because but not giving the because. So all the agencies here is no, and this applicant or licensee is just difficult. However, if that applicant came to the table and said no, and this is why, because if we do this, this is how it impacts our bottom line, and then the agencies can work with licensees to figure out how do we protect your bottom line and accomplish the resource protections. It's that open communication, and I'll give you an example, and it's not exactly fish passage, but it was resource area protection measures. You'll find that in general, agencies are pro run-of-river operations. Well, run-of-river operations are not nearly as lucrative as peaking operations. Everybody understands that, but we also understand that run-of-river operations are most protectful of aquatic resources. That said, the licensee in this case really wanted to protect their peaking operations, and the resource agencies really wanted run-of-river operations to protect certain resources, primarily mussels and spawning habitat. So once the licensee was able to come to the resource agencies and say, hey, this is why this operation is important to us, the resource agencies were able to work around the aspects that were actually important, like the seasonality of that peaking operation, the magnitude of the peaking operation, the amount of fluctuation, where the licensee was still able to protect their bottom line and the value of their project based on whatever the ISO was giving them for certain operational scenarios. But they were also able to protect the resource that they were intended to protect. So they didn't go to run-of-river operations. They just changed the way the peaking operations were done in a way that was suitable for both the licensee and the resource the agencies were intending to protect. They couldn't have done that if the licensee just said no, in which case there would have been mandatory conditions and things of that nature that would have dictated run-of-river, and the licensee would have either spent a lot of money litigating it or ended up doing the run-of-river operations. So, or both. They could have ended up doing it and spent a lot of money litigating it. So when you're working with resource agencies, know that they would rather come to an agreeable solution for their mandatory conditioning authority that is protective of the resource and protective of your project. And in general, I'm not going to say that all agency staff are this way. There are some that would be better employed by NGOs. Everybody knows that, but they can't take into consider a hydropower owner's concerns if they're not aware of them. So my suggestion is that you really focus on sharing information, building relationships, becoming a trustworthy partner, and working together to address project effects and your bottom line. Proactive. Start early, because these conversations can take a long time, and just keep that line of communication open. Don't like I said, when agencies start hearing just no, it's really frustrating, and it's not understood. So on the flip side, if agencies seem to be unreasonable, they're asking for stuff, and you've told them why everything that you want to do is important to you and your bottom line, then it's incumbent upon them to explain to you why they're asking for it. What is it that they're requesting, whether that be for information, PM&E measures, things of that nature. They need to be able to support it. They need to be able to explain it to you as the industry person, say, this is why I want this information, this is how it's going to be used. And if they can't do that, it's okay to challenge them, because they need to build a record to support any mandatory conditions that they have or want to enforce. And if they can't tell you why they want something, they're not building the record. So one way to get agency staff to reevaluate what they're asking for is to get them to justify it. Get them to explain it to you in a way that you understand it, and then you can either agree with them or you can disagree with them and discuss it. But what I find a lot of times is the barrier between agencies and industry tends to be communication, or a lack of understanding. It's not that people have different priorities. Everybody's got different priorities. It's that there's a lot of talking past each other and a lot of unwillingness to hear the other side. But once you can break down that barrier and hear the other side, you're going to be a much better position for solving the problems that you're facing. That's all I got.
Ken, we do have some time for questions, and it can be on Fish Passage, Ken's career, really anything. So if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand and you can ask it verbally.
Oh, come on.
You're right.
Hey,
how's it going, Ken?
good. How are you?
Good. So I guess for a little context, I'm with Haley at Current Hydro, and we're a developer. So we look at new projects pretty regularly and are oftentimes assessing the feasibility of projects before we've communicated with agencies. It's really easy to determine needs when there's like listings for species, whether they're threatened or endangered for assessing it. But how do resource agencies assess the needs for mitigation or fish passage for non-listed species? I feel like that's something that surprises lots of licensees, and isn't as like out in the open necessarily as, Atlantic salmon on the East Coast. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
A little bit. So it's easier with anadromous or catadromous fishes that need to migrate to complete their life history. It's not nearly as cut and dry for resident species. So I'll start with the migratory species. Oftentimes there's management plans in place that kind of dictate pie in the sky goals for restoration of anadromous species. And, you may have a project that you're looking at that is a 100-year-old dam that's been a barrier forever. And because of that barrier, there's no anadromous fish upstream of it, but there are anadromous fish downstream of it, but it's a barrier. Now you want to look at putting hydro on it. And that's an opportunity for resource agencies through the Federal Power Act to accomplish that passage goal that they have for the protection and restoration of that species. So that's one thing to look at, and that does open up, that site as being in play, let's say. For resident species, it's much more. It's not nearly as cut and dry. For the Section 18 fish weight prescriptions, you have to demonstrate that they need this passage to accommodate a life history, and that can be, thermal refugia. If it's a warm water stream with cold water trout, and in order for the species to survive and complete their life history cycle, they have to reach a tributary stream to survive the summer. Then that could be a justification, but it's a tougher argument to make. But in general, if you're looking at anadromous fish that have been meeting a barrier, and you're looking at developing that barrier, you're probably going to be looking at fish passage solutions.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for the question,
Mike?
Ryan.
Mike?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for your advice, Ken. I wanted to know if you have any thoughts on ways to work with agencies on new technologies or new ways of moving fish past barriers, maybe ones they've not seen before that are used in other countries but not here. We've sometimes run up against, well, we can approve if it's done this way, or this way because we haven't seen it done any other way. What's the best way to get new technology or new ways of doing things to get regulatory buy-in?
Yeah, so the new technologies right now, there's a lot that are coming on the market, and it's wonderful. So between Fish Heart, Natel, several others, some new eel technology, passage technologies, know a couple of things. Know that the agencies have an interest in improving fish passage and improving the technologies at sites. That is certainly an interest of theirs. It's a point of conversation where industry and agencies can align. However, they are new technologies. They are experimental in nature. So the agencies have some insecurities around that. They want to make sure that they are, at the end of the day, protecting the resource. So these licenses are 30 to 50 years long. And if they say, yeah, go ahead and install, this XYZ technology and walk away and you're done, well, you don't know if it's working. So there, and I'll be honest with you, every technology, whether it's an existing technology or a new technology, has to be proven after it's installed. It's just got to demonstrate that it's working the way that it was intended. With the new technologies, and I'm gonna use a fish-friendly runner as an example versus a narrow rack screen. Two different technologies intended to do the same thing. Narrow rack screens have been proven. They have standards set by the agencies to follow and guidelines, whether it be approach velocities, clear spacing, things of that nature. So they have clear guidance for you to follow in the development and design of that facility. The turbines, not necessarily. They're still experimental. So what happens is the agencies want to see those turbines advance, because if you find if it works, it's a magic bullet, right? I mean, it's like, hey, downstream fish passage, run it through the turbines, make power, everybody wins. So, but they don't know that it's going to work yet. So the way to advance those technologies with the agencies, and what you should be trying to do or accepting of, is their level of risk and your level of risk. So a couple ways to mitigate that. For their level of risk, give them a timeline. Actually, this works both ways. For your level of risk, it's a huge capital investment. What's the timeline you need in order to recover that capital investment if it doesn't work, and then shift gears to another approach? Is it 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? But really put pen to paper and approach the agencies with that information and say, hey, we're willing to do this, but we need but the agencies need some kind of backstop. If it doesn't work, then what? And the solution is, if it doesn't work after 10 years, we will be able to do the next solution, which is the racks, or the 15 years, whatever it might be. But come to the agencies with a number that is realistic and doesn't look inflated, right? I think the intent is the agencies will try to work with you on that. Their goal is, at the end of the day, they have to protect the resource. Ideally, the technology is going to work, okay? Or it may work with tweaks. The other way to potentially address some of that risk from a developer standpoint is, hey, we've got this turbine installed now. We're in relicensing. Our turbine is currently 35 years old, and it's slated for replacement in 10 years. We will replace it with a fish-friendly turbine in 10 years. So your economics, because you were going to do that O&M anyway on that replacement solution, is already better. And then you have, again, a period of time. Now, first of all, that 10 years of waiting to delay the technology's advancing. And then if it's still not at the point where it's readily accepted, you have an opportunity to test and then verify and then replace in the future. So there are ways to look at your economics, to be creative about it. The other thing that we're finding is that having peer-reviewed literature on various technologies to support the claims Having every little bit of information helps to give the agencies that warm and fuzzy feeling that they need to even entertain the conversation. Like
Is it
for,
okay if those peer reviewed? Is it okay if those peer reviewed studies come from other countries? I mean, will the U.S. regulatory agency give it weight?
so that I have a mixed answer for you there.
Okay.
It depends. It depends on a couple of things. Are you talking about the same species? You know, are you and are even though it's the same species, is that species characteristics the same as what you would have in the U.S.? And I'm thinking Atlantic salmon. You know, they're on both sides of the pond, but are they similar in size, similar in shape? You know, because they are genetically similar and alike, but there are differences, right? So those studies that are done in Europe may be, and the other component there is it's ESA. So there's a little more risk on the agency's part to go with experimental technology that hasn't been tested here in the U.S. for a species that has evolved in the U.S. That's where I was going with it. If it's a non-ESA species, you'll probably see more acceptance of the peer-reviewed literature from other countries. You know, American eel versus European eel, very similar species, and the you know, and it's not listed, so there's a little more flexibility for the agencies to leverage versus an endangered species. So it's all going to be site specific, Mike, and you know, but all literature is better than no literature, or any literature is better than no literature.
Thank you.
Mike, and then Ken, it looks like we have a question in the chat. Could you talk about your experience with sonar and video analytics or pattern recognition technologies that provide kind of a real-time monitoring? How do traditional fish passage design be optimized and become efficient?
I have very little. I know some of the technologies are extremely valuable. Some of them are challenged. It's site specific. Air bubbles, for example, can be or turbidity, depending on the exact technology, can hinder the results. But they're making tremendous strides with it, and you know, with AI and the species identifications that are being developed, the challenge is that I'm finding mostly is cost. Good coverage. It right now is very expensive, and what we're seeing from an agency perspective is resistance. Even though we think the technologies, I'm using the wrong pronouns, but please bear with me. The technologies certainly have an application that is generally supported by resource agencies for use, and but the cost tends to be a struggling point for licensees. When I worked on a project or several projects on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, there was FERC required a study plan to set up DIDSIM technologies to evaluate and monitor for eel passage, and also look for river herring out migrations. And the study cost was significantly greater than what FERC anticipated and got significant consistency on it. So while it was thought that that would be a great way to kill two birds with one stone, not fish, that it was not a desired outcome from the licensee's perspective. So that was challenged at FERC under rehearing of that study plan determination. So I think it is promising if you're a licensee and you're exploring that technology and you think that it'll work, then that's and you're willing to go for it, I say go for it. And did that come from Uriah, by the way?
Did.
You could have just asked it, Uriah.
Looks like we have time for one more question. We actually have another question in the chat. Can you speak a little bit on how the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service may work together to develop fish passage requirements and how you can work through some of those conflicts? For example, if the National Marine Fisheries Service wants a fish lift and then U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants volitional. I don't think. Volitional.
Volitional.
Volitional. Thank you. Get tongue-tied.
So volitional being what is meant by volitional is a ladder or other means of the fish navigating the barrier volitionally on its own. So a nature like fishway versus a fish lift or trap and truck type facility. So when you have those competing approaches, what I think that's a slightly loaded question, because my experience has been that neither agency is like NIMS would not typically say no to volitional fish passage. They're willing to accept that in this case, that fish lift as a possible solution. So it's not that NIMS is saying you must put in a fish lift and you will not put in a fish ladder. That's two very different things. Now, if that were to be the scenario, and where they are actually prescribing two different things, that's where this early communication comes in. The conversations, the discussions, and trying to come up with a resolution early on where the agencies agree and write the prescriptions that are complementary of each other. At the end of the day, if you have two Section 18 fishway prescriptions that are run afoul of each other, FERC can't issue the license. So FERC has to resolve that conflict to one or the other fishways with the agencies, because FERC can't change the mandatory condition either. So you should never be in a situation where you're having to do two different types of things. Because you have two different agencies, and that's just bad government on the agencies as well. So what I think the question really is, though, is NIMS says it's okay to put in a lift, but Fish and Wildlife Service wants a ladder, and we would rather do the lift. That's a very different scenario. And I think you need to then look at what species the agencies are trying to protect. Each agency has different trust resources that they are responsible for. And it could be that the lift is not suitable for a species Fish and Wildlife Service is trying to pass. And that's why Fish and Wildlife Service isn't asking for a lift or supportive of a lift. Like salmon are easy to pass, and generally easy to pass, I should say. I mean, every fish pass has its difficulties. But if you can pass salmon, you can pretty much pass everything else in the system. So as long as the salmon, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I flipped that around backwards. If you can pass shad, you can pass salmon without a problem. But shad are very finicky. A shadow from a telephone pole going across the water, shad will see that as a barrier. So when you have infrastructure for a fish lift that creates shadows, you can have significant problems for shad entering that fish lift. Fish and Wildlife Service may be interested in passing shad, whereas certain groups within NIMS don't care about shad. So that may be where you're seeing the conflicts. But again, that's a conversation. Have that dialogue, explore why the agencies are asking for what they are asking for and why they're asking for it, so that you can then create potential solutions. Again, as a hydropower owner, you know your project better than anybody. You are in a better position to come up with solutions if you're willing to work with the agencies on those solutions. So just like I said, I think the question was a little skewed, but I think in reality what it is I want to go with the fish lift, not the volitional fish passage. How do I go with the fish lift? Talk to the agencies and figure out what their issues are to come up with solutions.
Ken? Really appreciate you taking the time. You shared a lot of valuable insights. And after today's conversation, maybe we'll do like a 301 if folks have an interest on getting even deeper into some of the geographical differences with species of interest and really diving into the technologies that are used to pass these fish. So thank you, Ken. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to check in on any updates with the raffle.
Yes, sorry again about feedback. Thank you, Ken, and thanks, Katie. So thank you everyone who participated in the survey. We're not going to bring up any results. I think, I don't know if they're going to be of interest to you guys on the phone. If that is not the case, please let me know. I'm sure we can have a wrap-up report of how people came into the hydropower industry, just so you know, if you came in the same way, you can feel akin to someone else in the industry, which is always a nice thing. But I do want to start sharing my screen, and
Kelly,
we can kick off.
See the results. It lets us click and view them. I don't know if you knew that or not. So
Then perfect. Thank you so much, Norbert. Then we definitely don't need to put them up on screen. Instead, the real fun part of this raffle, the actual raffle. So I have put in everyone's names who participated and provided their name. So thank you for that. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go and do this. And if it has noise, get ready for a spinning sound and some clapping at the end. So here we go. Our first winner is, Sam Kirsch. Yay! That was a close one. Sam, if you can put your email address in the chat, please, that would be much appreciated. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and remove you from our list now. And our second, I like the noise, is, another close one, Jack Printup.
Nice. Congrats, Jack.
All right, Jack, if you could put your email address in the chat as well, we will make sure we get you both your $25 Visa gift cards to celebrate the end of the year. Yay! All right. And again, thank you all so much for participating in that survey. That's going to help us guide our programming and what we do to help you guys advance in your careers throughout the next year and beyond. We still have a little bit of time, and I did want maybe to have open up the floor. If anyone has had any big success this year that they want to share with the group, we can all applaud you. I do want to hear, what did you do in hydropower this year that you're really proud of? in the spirit of a year end, the Spotify Wrapped. This is the Flow Wrapped.
Kick us off. I am very proud of the Flow group this year. We have had some amazing speakers. I think every call I'm saying that this is the most participants we've had on a Flow call. So people have been coming in, seemed really engaged with our speakers and our content. And we've also started new initiatives like the Rising Star Award. So I will plug that. We are going to be doing that again in 2026. That is a self-nominated application to highlight young professionals. We had our second year this year, and it's just a really awesome way to highlight what Flow is doing and what contributions people are making, even if we're, not super advanced in our careers yet. So I just want to thank everyone for your participation this year, and we have some really exciting things coming up for 2026. And Flow is just going to continue to grow, and we're going to have more and more opportunities to connect and engage over the coming years. Maybe we'll just end there. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you have a safe and happy holiday season over the next couple of weeks, and we will check in 2026.
Thank
Just
you.
want to say thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank
Ken.
you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks.